Welcome everybody to our webinar on Write Your Story. And we have Wendy Lawton is going to be our speaker today. And so we're going to get started with opening in prayer. So let's pray. And I pray eyes wide open when I'm in virtual group. Just so you know, that's how I pray. Heavenly Father, Lord Almighty, thank you so much for this technology. Thank you for each person that has joined us here right now and the people that will be listening to this. Lord, how important it is for us to write our story, the story that you have given us. You are our story, Lord. So open our ears so we can hear. Ask for peace and confidence for our speaker. She is just awesome, but Lord, fill her with your peace and confidence and give us all what do we need to hear from you? It's so awesome when we feel that Holy Spirit rising up in us, even if it's butterflies telling us that we need to tell our story, Lord. Give us confidence and courage. Let us learn from Wendy today. And we ask this in your precious name, Jesus. Amen. All right. Well, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you our speaker, Wendy. Wendy is an agent with the much respected Books and Such. It's a literary group. She represents some of the finest writers in the industry, including many best-selling authors. She relishes all aspects of the work. She loves helping her clients develop their ideas and chart their careers. She served on the faculty of several major writers' conferences. I've seen her at writers' conferences, and she's won the famous Bulwer-Lytton competition and authored. She's an author of 13 books. First place also is honored to have Wendy. She is on our board of directors, and she is one of our just valued members of our board. The other thing about Wendy is that she's a doll maker. In the quarter of a century, she's been sculpting and creating original porcelain dolls, and she has a substantial body of work, and her company, the Lawton Doll Company, has issued more than 350 original editions so far. So she's quite a well-rounded person. And she's also married 35 years to her best friend Keith, and they're the parents of 3 adult children, and they live in California. Now, doesn't she sound awesome? Well, she is. So let me turn it over to Wendy.
Well, thank you very much, Helen. That was a very nice introduction. I could tell it's a little bit out of date, though, because I believe I've been married for about 47 years now. But that's okay. It just shows you I haven't updated my website. So I am delighted to be here, delighted to be with you and all you brave people, because one of the hardest things anyone has to do is tell their story with authenticity. And so I'm just very, very glad to be here. Story is powerful, and that's why we want you to learn to tell your story, to tell a little bit of your journey. We serve a God who is a storyteller. I mean, we have the Bible in our hands. Jesus was the God who told stories. You know, the Pharisees gave rule after rule, do this, do that, gave ideas, and yet Jesus came and he said, there once was a man, or there was a girl, there was a woman. He would tell a story and just pull everybody in. And if you've ever watched a speaker or your pastor, they're talking about the ideas, you know, these ideas, 3-point sermon, and all of a sudden they stop and they tell a story. And you can see everybody in the room lean forward as they tell the story. And it's like, click, everybody's on. Everybody is into that story. Story is so very powerful. We have a long history of story in First Place for Health. Ever since First Place, I saw Carol Lewis here, who is our founder. And Carol told stories, how many years ago, Helen, was it? When it started, is it 35 years now? Can't remember exactly, but something. So story is part of who we are, because that's how we encourage each other. And I just wanted to show you some of the power of story. We have some little bits and pieces of stories to show you to start out, and Helen's going to help me with that.
Yes, and it's 36 years. Sorry about that. I was on mute and couldn't get off mute, but founded in 1981. But here is our first, this is on our website. So hold on one second and you'll be watching a little video clip of some story.
Are you looking for a weight loss program? Well, there's a lot of them out there, but let me tell you about First Place for Health.
First Place for Health is an awesome program. I mean, it has been a life-changing experience for me.
I've lost 26 pounds during the first 9 weeks of this program.
For First Place for Health, it doesn't matter if you have 10 pounds to lose, 50, 100.
Now I know how to read labels when I'm shopping. I know what to look for. I've got an exercise program. I feel fantastic. I've lost weight. My health has improved. I cannot say enough good things about this program.
Not only have I changed my way of eating healthier, but I mean, I have let God in my life, and it has been amazing.
I'm so grateful for the nutrition, the exercise, the knowledge. All of that is really important and vital, but it's secondary to the first place for me, which is God.
It just makes so much sense to have a God-based, Bible-based program for something you're struggling with.
I began to take my focus off of myself and began to put him first place in my life, focus on him, focus on his word.
I mean, spiritually, I've gone like from here all the way up here. It's an awesome program.
If you want to have fun, it's for you. If you want to laugh, it's for you. If you want to grow closer to the Lord, it's for you.
When I first started this program, I've known about it for a long time, but didn't have one convenient. But now that there's one here at Grace, that took away all my excuses.
I encourage y'all to come into the program, First Place for Health, and it will be a life-changing experience for you.
Wasn't that great?
Yes.
I think we have another story that I just wanted you to look at to see how someone else has developed their story.
Give me 1 second, of course. I'm going to tell you, this is a story is Jen Crow. She's one of our first placers. She's one of my friends. I just wanted you guys to know this story is a relatively longer story, but I went ahead and focused on one area of her story so that, you know, because she also made this story for her church. So this is Jen's story.
I'm Jen Krog, and I facilitate First Place for Health here at Lakeside.
And I know it's coming, guys. Sorry, technology. Here it comes.
I'm Jen Krog. Management, I guess. I'm Jen Krog, and I facilitate First Place for Health here at Lakeside, and it is a whole health weight management, I guess, small group, and we look at the whole person, physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. My own personal story of God transforming and changing my life probably began when I got pregnant with our first child, and things started to change. I wanted to be the best mom that I could, and after Nate was several months old, I was still at 300 pounds. Well, I wasn't going to be my best or do my best, you know, moving around like that. And a few more years went by, and I came across a program, a Christian weight management program, and wasn't going to tell anyone that I was going to do this because I've done things in the past. Well, long story short, the Lord put me in the position of leadership in 1993, and I was the heaviest one in the group because he knew I needed that accountability. So he put me in that spot, and I've been in that spot ever since. First Place is many things to many different people. But one thing I think that's a commonality is it gives people hope. You know, for me, I never knew what it was to lose weight and keep it off. I was pretty good at losing weight, but the keeping off part just never happened. And I would have never imagined that all these years later, I would be telling other people that they could do that. But obviously, I had hope at some point that, wow, this is different. This can be different. So regardless of what a person's situation is or their struggle is, I believe that First Place does offer hope.
Well, just shows you one little part of the story. And I think, do you have a poll for us now?
I do. We do have a poll. We thought we would like to know how you felt about writing, how comfortable. So I'm going to launch a poll. On your screen, you're going to have a button that says, I want to participate in the poll. And so how comfortable are you at writing? Are you terrified? Are you open to trying? Are you experienced? Are you a published author? So let us know. Looks like we've had about 40% of the people have voted. So they're coming in real fast now. So I'm going to leave it open. A couple more minutes. We have 1 or 2 more people, not minutes, seconds. So a few more people need to vote. So, all right. Looks pretty good. All right, I'm going to close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, poll's ending. And here, now you all can see the results. So as you can see, we do have 16% of the people are terrified. Wendy, that's not surprising. 50% are opening to trying it. So clearly they're here. And we have 16% experienced and 19% are published authors. So way to go. Looks like we have a little bit of everything here.
Well, that's a great way to start, because I wanted to give you permission before even starting to tell you how to write your story, permission to write junk. Because when we first take pencil to paper or hands to keyboard, the easiest thing is to freeze. And you've heard about writer's block. I get speaker's block, so you can see I'll go for a word and it won't be there. But you get writer's block, you get all kinds of things if you put too much pressure on yourself. So you have permission to just start. Your first and second and maybe third tries at this are going to be all messy. You're going to wander in your story. You're going to think of something new halfway through your story. That's all okay, because you can shift it around later, and you can pull out different parts and save it for later. I always say, let no word go unpublished. So everything is good, but maybe it's for later. So you're going to be pulling stuff out, you're going to be putting stuff in, you're going to be changing words, you're going to find out where your voice is passive, which means your verbs don't have punch. Instead, your verbs are the to-be verbs. Like is, are, all of those kind of verbs, they soften down the language of the power of your story. So you're going to look for all of that stuff, but don't think about that at the beginning. Now we're going to be sending you tomorrow, I believe, or putting on the website a worksheet for you to use, because I'm one of those people who likes to know where I'm going before I start. So if you are a planner, then you're going to love this worksheet, because it has down all kinds of questions for you to fill in to begin to tell your story. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about each part of this now, and then you'll get that tomorrow. So 2 ways to go: just write junk and work it out later and that type of thing, and work it onto your worksheet later, or plan it out first and then write it later. It's important when we're telling stories, and of course we're talking specifically about first place type success stories, but anything I say can be applied to any kind of a story you're going to write. So, but first place success stories is what we're going to be talking about. That's those wonderful before and after stories we love, because there is nothing like, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a dog who was found running on the streets, it has mange, and somebody gets it to a vet and fix it up and it's beautiful afterwards. People watch those by the tons. It's people love to see transformation, because we all long for transformation. And we don't realize that our success stories are stories of transformation. Even if we've only gotten 1/4 of the way to our goal, we are still being transformed inside. So those stories are so wonderful. So give yourself permission to play around with it, and don't be terrified. Don't be terrified at all, because there are so many ways you can use the story. Some that are published, and some that are going to be much easier for you if you happen to be terrified. One thing I want to tell you, just one point to your story. You know how your pastor gives his sermon and there's 3 points and 3 illustrations and then a wrap up at the end? We're not going to tell those kinds of stories. We're going to tell one point in the story. So as you begin to plan, you're going to pick out a part of your story. Now, your story, your journey of life is long. I mean, it started when you were born. Maybe it started before you were born, if you want to tell the story of your great-grandparents or that type of thing. That's your whole life journey. But no one is ever going to buy a book that has your entire life journey in it. You're going to pull out little pieces and use them in your story. So your first place story, you are going to look for one theme, maybe one thing you learned this last week at your first place group. And begin to think about that. That was one thing you'd never thought about before, and a light bulb goes off, or goes on, actually. And that's the part of the story you're going to do this time, because your life is the raw material for many, many, many stories. And so, it's like when Helen was introducing me, she told the story of me being a literary agent. She also told the story about me being a doll maker. Well, those are 2 separate worlds, totally separate worlds. This is actually my 3rd career because I was a writer in between. Those are all different worlds. They're all part of my long story. But usually when I'm talking at writers' conferences, I don't even mention those parts of my story. It's all the other parts of my story that I tell. So it'll yield many, many different stories. And we'll talk a little bit later about how we're going to use those. You don't have to tell it all. Don't feel bad. Don't feel like you're not giving the whole story if you don't tell the whole thing. You're just doing a vignette. And you don't have to tell a story chronologically. A lot of times we get stuck thinking, well, I got to start at the beginning. And I need to work my way through the whole story so people can get it, so that they can understand. That's not necessary. We want to start our stories in what they call in media res, and that means in the middle of action. So rather than say, my story started when I was born at 11 pounds, and I have always tipped the scale, that might be your story. That might be the theme of your story throughout, but you don't have to start there. You can just say, I walked outside and the ice cream truck was right there ringing its bell and tempting me. So, you're starting in the middle of action, and then you begin to say what that did. So just one point in your story, meaning one idea or one theme. You're going to want to identify the spiritual truth, because there's always going to be spiritual truth in that story. So for instance, it might be pride. Maybe your story is about, I never wanted to come to a group because I'm just not a group person, and this is my problem. I can solve it by myself. I don't need to tell anyone what my problems are. I want to solve it myself. Possibly your story is about disobedience. God has made it clear to you that he wants your body to be his temple. And he's talked to you many, many times, and you keep falling off that wagon. And until you get the obedience right, nothing else. You don't get to go on in your life to do something else, because that's what he said, do this first, and then we'll talk. Maybe your problem is gluttony. And it's so funny because we hear the word gluttony and we think of the Romans who would eat and eat and eat and, throw bones to the dogs and throw up afterwards. And that was one form of gluttony, of course. But today there's a whole different form of gluttony. And you see it all the time. There are people who are foodies who think of nothing but foods. They will wait 2 years to get a reservation at the French Laundry restaurant. They will find the most expensive meal anywhere. They will buy coffee that costs $500 a pound because it is so exquisite and because it comes from monkeys eating the seeds. And I won't go any further because some of you already know what happens. So anyway, there are all kinds of gluttony, and it's just that focus on food and making food somewhere pretty near an idol. somewhere pretty near. I live for food. No, we don't. We live for the Lord. But maybe it's just bondage to food. Maybe you've done everything you can, and something else is behind that. And that's one of the things that is so wonderful about First Place, because we talk so much. There's a wonderful part in your First Place literature about emotional mapping, helping you break that bondage. And so you need to figure out what the spiritual truth is behind your journey, because believe it or not, in a room with 25 people in your First Place group, there are probably 25 different stories. God's doing 25 different things in those people's lives. And so it's finding out what is God doing in your life with food, with obedience, with First Place. And so that takes some work on your part to figure that out. You might want to identify a certain verse that you use, and we'll hear a testimony a little later in which the verse is basically the whole theme and identifies the spiritual truth. So it might be around one of the verses we've memorized, and that is the verse for you. I mean, you almost feel like tattooing it on your arm or something. It's so integral to your journey. So after you identify the spiritual truth, you might want to use a verse or a quote to wind in. And so jot that down somewhere, because that may go into your story, or maybe a whole bunch. As you're beginning to build these stories, some of you might be like me and love to use a fountain pen. I love to take a fountain pen, and I love to write all over a paper and kind of write on the side of the paper and everything, and add in things that way. Just do that, and don't be worried about having it look perfect to start with. When you tell your story, you're going to want to write in scenes. Now, some of you, I know we have some published authors here, and we have some who have quite a bit of experience writing, and you've always heard the words show, don't tell. And that's when we're writing our stories or giving a testimony, that is so important, because it's very easy to just get up and tell what happened. But we want to take people into our story, and we do that by showing. We write in scenes. And let's see, I have an example here. I ate between meals versus the refrigerator seemed to call my name. So one way of saying it is I ate between meals every time I had the chance. And that would be, the other way of saying that would be, the refrigerator called my name every time I went by. I'd open the refrigerator, and that breath of cold air would just calm me, and my little hands would reach in. You see what I mean? It's just different. You're putting them into the story. I will give you one caveat. We want to really be careful, because we're telling these stories to encourage other people. So we want to really be careful to not trigger people. I have a client, Jan Kern, who wrote a wonderful book called Scars That Wound. And it was a book about cutting for teenage girls. And she told one girl's story about all of her cutting that she did. And Jan was very careful when she came to the story. She would show everything. She would show the girl walking into her bedroom and flopping down on her bed and the tears running down. But the second she came to the scene where the young girl would have taken out a razor blade, she would drop into tell, and she would just say, and Mary knew what would happen next. And when it was over, she was ashamed. Why did she do that? Simple. Because the young girls who are reading that, if they had heard about the razor blade running across skin, it would have been a trigger. And probably over half the girls reading that book couldn't have stopped themselves. They would have gotten a razor blade and run it over their skin. So she was very careful. We do the same thing when we're telling our story. We want to tell everything about the story to make it come alive to people. Except let's not make food an idol in our stories. So let's not talk about that chocolate brownie that just drips with whatever, chocolate chips or something, because that can be a trigger to people. And it's just, once you place that in their mind, that's all they're going to think about until if they've got a bondage to food. You have got to have a great opening that sets your story. And remember, I said we start in media res. And I wrote 2 openings. They're not the greatest because I just jotted them down, but I just want to use them as examples. One opening would be, I sat on that examining table in the cold doctor's office and could hardly think about the words he was saying to me. Diabetes. No, all I could think about was how I was going to heft myself off that table. But that one word was going to send me on a journey that would change my life. Another one. Sweetie, my mama used to say to me, don't fight it. We come from a long line of supersized Southern women. Men love us because we can cook up a storm. She'd dry my tears and we'd head for the donut drive-up. Openings that set the scene, that basically tell what you're going to tell about, that kind of prepare us for your one point. You also have to have a closing that is equally powerful. And so your closing wants to be full circle. So the one where we said sitting on the table in the doctor's office, this is how she could have closed that. Thanks to first place and the members who kept me on track, diabetes no longer applies to me. And I can hop up on that examining table like a 16-year-old. Or the other one, the Southern girl. My mama was right. I did come from oversized stock, and my Jerry does love my cooking. But with the help of God, I've broken the chain of inherited overweight. And I can cook delicious meals that taste wonderful and still keep fit and healthy. It's my new Southern thing. So you see how that ends, and it ends on a good note. It ends with a satisfying ending, and yet it connects to the beginning. So that's one of the things that you want to do. I'm also going to encourage you to put sensory bits in there. Stories come alive when we use all the senses, our eyes, our nose, our mouth, our ears, our hands for feeling. Just things like the crunch of snap peas or the smell of week-old grease in the fryer. Doesn't that turn your stomach? I ran my hand over the crisp size 10 linen skirt. I wish. Fear that the creak of the cupboard door might wake someone. How surprised was I that baked fish had a rich, buttery, satisfying taste. Now see, there we used great food words, but it is a healthful food. The huge lighted mirror outlined my ginormous hips in a delicate, shimmering glow. So you can see each one of those was a different sense. The snap or the crunch of snap peas, that's the ear. The smell of week-old grease is our nose. I ran my hand over the crisp linen. That's our sense of feel. The creak of the cupboard door, again, the ear. Baked fish had a taste. Yes. And the huge lighted mirror, that's with our eyes. And so much of what we do is with our eyes. So how are we doing, Helen? Do we have any questions we need to answer yet?
We don't have any questions, but I love that buttery tasting fish. I tasted it. I thought that sounded pretty good, and I could hear the crunch of that snap pea. So
good.
I think the show and tell is hard work. I'm definitely a teller. So I have worked hard at learning how to show. So I understand.
and to show in the appropriate places, because of course we don't show absolutely everything. And when we want the story to go a little faster in a certain place, pacing, we tell it. We don't wind out the showing. So I'm going to tell you a little bit. Now we could do a whole college class, a whole 3-unit college class on the hero's journey. But every story basically follows the hero's journey. Even Christ's story follows the hero's journey. And if you look at any kind of a book, you can study the hero's journey and you can see that it always fits in. The hero's journey, and I'm doing it really simply, I'm giving you 4 steps, but there's the inciting incident. Something happens that incites this. Something happened to make you go to a first place group. Something happened to realize your weight was out of control and you could no longer do it yourself. Something happened when the doctor said whatever he said. inciting incident. And then there's your first step on the journey. And in the hero's journey, they talk about the reluctant hero. Very often we don't want to take that first step, but we do. And once we take that first step, we are on that journey. And so after that, there's a lot of up and downs. You could write a whole book because the up and downs are the main part of the book. If you've ever read a romance novel, they're based on the hero's journey, of course. Something happens to get it started, there's conflict, and then that up and down is conflict and solution, conflict and solution, conflict and solution, until you come to the big conflict at the end. Now, in a shorter story, we don't have to worry about that because there's the up and down, not too many ups and downs, but a satisfying ending is the last thing. And those are very important because you want to make sure we do have the up and down, because I've used the word authentic, but when we're telling our story, it's very important to be authentic. Nobody wants to read a story about, I started on this journey and I started first place and I never plateaued, my weight never went up, I lost every single week and it was so easy, I hardly realized, and all of a sudden I was a size 3. I mean, we don't want to read that, right? It's kind of like, you know, if you felt like murder, it would be a just cause in that case. So tell the honest thing. Tell about the hard parts too, because they're part of what the journey is about and how God got you through. So I want to talk a little bit about what we do with our story or our stories once they're written. Easiest thing, or maybe it's not the easiest thing, but okay. It looks like I was going to tell first about... oh,
well, I'll stop sharing. Go ahead. Sorry. My apologies.
No, that's good. That's good. The first thing is a written testimony for your family. And I know that writing your faith journey for your family, and not just your weight loss journey, but your entire faith journey, is something that's going to last for generations and generations. If there's one legacy you can leave that's an important legacy, it's going to be the words you leave to be passed down. And I have always loved to collect things that people have passed down that ended up for sale or something somewhere. But I have Bibles that people have written in the edges of all the Bibles from people in my church who didn't have anyone to leave them to, and they know I love this type of thing. I have my mother's cookbook that she wrote for all of us with all of our favorite family recipes, and she would write in there, we had this when we, you know, had grandma over or something like that. Those types of things are so wonderful, but the faith journey is the one that is has a lasting effect on great-grandchildren you may never meet. So we write our stories for our family. But then also our before and after success stories, our transformation stories. Go, Helen. They are such wonderful stories. And one thing I love about First Place, and if you guys, and I know probably most of you have poked around the website and seen all the different parts, but these success stories are exactly what I have needed when I feel I need some encouragement or something else. Helen, that looks familiar.
Yeah, I have my story, and Finda, who's one of the attendees, her story's on here, and Finda's right here, and Jeannie Donovan also. There's a whole bunch of people on here whose story is on our success story. So one of the ways I wanted to cover, how do you get your success story on the First Place for Health website? It's real easy. Under resources, well, first, if you go to our home page, so on our home page, under resources, there is a success story. You can get it here or here. And we have, you know, a ton of success stories, 17 pages of success stories. But you just click this little button right here. It goes to share your story. And you can put your name, your email, paste your story in here, and upload your before and after pictures. But also, or you can also send your story to Lisa Lewis, and the stories end up with Lisa Lewis. She manages all our website information, all our media content. And so she'll review the story and get it posted up on the website. She might email you and ask you a question or something like that, but that's how you submit your story to First Place for Health.
And bless her heart, sometimes she'll do a little editing if you ask her. I know she will. So it always helps to have a good editor. Also, we can go wider than First Place. I mean, First Place is a wonderful place to be your first publishing venue. And, you know, publishing your story the first time, no matter what it is, your book, your story, children's story, whatever it is, pushing that send button is probably the hardest thing you will ever do in your life. And so First Place is a strictly non-judgmental place, and it's the perfect place to start, to send your story. So I encourage all of you, when you get your stories written, to send them to First Place, because it's just a perfect place to be published. And of course, you can put that on your resume that you have been published at an online source. Magazine articles. Everybody likes before and after type stories, stories of triumph, stories of transformation. I just picked one, guideposts. Some of you have probably read Guideposts. Guideposts loves first-person stories, and they even have writer's guidelines there that you can go to and find out about the story, because you know, how many words they want the story to be, less than 1,500 words, and what the feeling should be, and all of that. And they pay for the stories. And not only do they pay for the stories, but when I wrote for Guideposts, they were, I believe, at 7.2 million circulation. I'm not sure what it is now, but it's probably somewhere in that. Can you imagine getting to tell your testimony to millions of people? That's what a magazine story can do for you. So don't be shy. It's just as easy as submitting. And if they don't like it, they probably won't even get back to you. That's what ends up happening, because so many stories are submitted. So it's not like somebody's going to come back and say, oh my goodness, that was a terrible story. But if they like the story, then it is, if it's published, your story goes out to so many people. You might become a speaker, and your story might be given verbally. And as Helen said, they did a poll of people about what their greatest fear was, and dying was number 2. Speaking in public was number 1. And I thought that was really interesting. But you know, as a speaker, you can actually publish your own speaking now on YouTube. You can put it on the First Place YouTube channel. And I think you've got that, Helen, to put up, right?
I do. Here you go. This is the First Place for Health YouTube channel. If you go to YouTube and you just type in First Place for Health, you'll get our channel. And this is where the webinar will get posted tomorrow. You'll see the webinar get posted. But if you scroll down here, the stories that you've heard, the Jen Crow story that we heard a little while ago, her whole story is on here. And did you want me to go ahead and play Monique's story now, or?
Sure, please do.
Okay, so here is Monique's story. And
Monique was the one that I told you used the Bible verse as her theme and winds up with that.
Right. I have it actually on my computer, so give me, let me just stop this. I have it, I just want to make sure it comes across real well, so here we go.
Hi. I'm Monique Johnson, and I just reached my goal. And all I want to say is don't quit. Okay. I remember when I was I just got under 150, and getting up in the morning and putting on my sneakers to get on my treadmill before going to work, and it's 5 a.m. and I'm saying, oh, you know, I'm getting all these compliments, and, you know, maybe I should just stop here. And then I said, oh, no, well, maybe it's a few more. So I lose a little bit more, and I'm getting all compliments again. And then it's like, oh, I got to get up again and put on my sneakers, and I'm saying, well, maybe I need to quit now. Maybe this is good enough. And then we had a Bible study, and I had Philippians 1:6. And, I need my glasses. You know, I know these by heart, but when I'm in front of people, that kind of goes away. And it says, being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus. When I started this journey, I set out to lose 50 pounds. So I'm saying, you know what, I'm not there yet. And these last couple of pounds have been really hard. And I know it's because I still got a lot to learn. And if it takes me 2 more months or whatever to lose these 2 pounds, and I'm learning in that process, then that's the way it's going to be. And when God wants me to get there, that's when I'll get there. But right now, I'm happy where I'm at. I thank God for everything he's done for me. I thank God for first place. And now I can get through these chairs like this. And I don't have to have everybody pull in because I can fit. So anyway, thank you.
She's so cute.
Don't you love it though? And did you notice that she had only one point? That's why it was powerful. Her point was, don't quit. And so that went out throughout the whole thing. So you just got to love it. So YouTube can be a great place to post your story. Also your church. Think of how powerful the testimony could be in your church. And you saw those 2 ones that kind of looked like commercials at the very beginning. Those were done for church so that the first place members simply got together and recorded those. So for your church, especially if you have a first place group, then you get everybody excited about going to the first place group. I keep seeing talking down there, and you can see that I'm reading the talking instead of talking myself. If you like to speak, there are many venues, churches on Mother's Day, MOPS groups, and that's mothers of preschoolers, and MOPS groups need speakers all the time. They don't pay, but they pay in so many thanks. You want to speak at your first place for health group, you might even be like Monique and speak at Summit. Or Pamela's here, and she wrote us that she is going to be giving a TED Talk at a large meeting that she's going to in her denomination. And so that's very exciting, and that one point is going to be so wonderful for her.
And Wendy, we actually have a question from Pamela. She just said, do you have any guidance on how to write a story? Like, she has 12 minutes. So I was thinking maybe I should show them the little worksheet just so they can see what they're going to get. And maybe you could talk through it, but I have it available. So I thought, so they know the tool they're going to get. Now, I know you guys can't see all this. I did that on purpose so that you don't, you're not scribbling. You're going to get this tomorrow, so don't worry. But Wendy's taking you through the steps here on the things that she's talked about and how to narrow your weight. And I can make this bigger if you'd like. There we go.
And when you get this, you're just going to scribble things on it. You're going to print out a whole bunch of these and just start scribbling in the way to go. And especially a TED Talk, because the thing with a TED Talk is it has to be pretty refined. People have come to expect a certain energy and a certain conciseness and a certain movement to a TED Talk. And so after you've watched 100 different TED Talks and seen all the different kinds, I would kind of take them apart and see how they do it and then put it back together like that. With all of us, when we start doing something, when I wrote my first book, which was a children's book, a middle grade book, I read all kinds of best-selling children's books and took them apart and found out exactly how many words were in a chapter, how many chapters were in a book, how big the words were. I learned by copying, so to speak, and copying format. And so you can sure do that with a TED Talk. And I think that's an exciting challenge.
Along that same line, we had somebody that asked, how do you determine which part of your story to tell, when you have a long story and you only have 5 or 10 minutes?
Well, I think sometimes you can test them out on friends. Or, one of the things when you give your story, parts of your story, say at first place, you're going to begin to see how people react to it. And so that's kind of your focus group. And so if you can give it different places to start with, you're going to find out what the powerful parts of the story are. I mean, I think our friend Karen Porter is actually going to be doing a webinar at some point also, and she's wonderful at teaching how to speak, and she will talk a little bit more about that. But the parts of your story, you're going to eventually probably write all the parts of your story. So when you pick your theme, which part of your story goes best with that theme? And so, you can keep changing it all the time. Okay.
I think that's good. Yeah. Karen has a great book called Speak Like Jesus Speaks, I think it's called. It's a good book. I read it and gave mine away, but it's a great book. So I recommend Karen Porter's book for that. That's a good
Right.
book.
Perfect. Also, online is a great place to share your story. Share it on your Facebook page and share little bits of it at a time. People love to see those before and after pictures, and you will see the number of comments you get, the number of likes you get are phenomenal when you show two pictures against each other. And I'm on my journey, and or last night at my first place group, I learned the most important thing, the thing that's helped me more than anything else. Those type of things are going to be wonderful for your Facebook page. Also, First Place has a Facebook page, and you might want to comment on there to become part of that community. If you can't stand the thought of standing up in front of people and having them look at your face and having to speak in front of people, podcasts. Everybody, when they exercise, wants to listen to podcasts or spoken word, and so you can begin to create some podcasts of your story, and maybe even gathering some of your friends together and doing stories. And also, you're not going to want to forget that you need to share privately. One-on-one, people will say, how in the world did you do this? It's like you go into your class reunion and everybody says, I never would have recognized you if you didn't have a name tag on. What did you do? And then you could say, well, you would never believe. And then you begin to tell the story. And it can be a way of drawing them in toward your faith journey, as well as your weight journey or your lifestyle journey or your health journey. Health is something that resonates with everybody. So one of the questions is, how many stories can you get from one journey? And I'll tell you, there is no limit to the stories you get. As soon as you think, there, I've written my story. That's the 10th book. I have written everything I can write. It's just my colleague Janet and I just wrote a story about the publishing industry. And we got done and we said, there, that's everything we know. Everything we know. We don't need to say another word because it's all in the book. But then all of a sudden you learn something new and it keeps going on. And so, in each stage of our life, new things happen. And as you go along this journey, you're going to find that things continue to happen. And even, in our graying years, the Lord talks about doing well in our graying years. So I also wanted to tell you one other thing. How are we doing for time?
We're doing pretty good. We didn't do a poll. We could.
Uh-oh.
We could do a poll if you wanted to before we tell them one last thing, I guess.
Did we have another poll?
Yeah, we were just interested in what kind of media are you interested in doing? And you can you can choose all, like click all that apply. So which are the medias you're interested in using and telling your story? So I launched it. You guys all have to vote though. So okay, we got our first vote. Yay! So you can click as many as you want. So just wondering. So far it's not bad. We got a lot of people wanting to speak live. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Karen Porter, get ready.
Yeah. Oh, she's here listening. I see that. I hope I got the title right, Karen. Okay, let's go. Yeah, see? All right, I think we have a couple more people. I'll leave it open for a couple more. Just choose as many as you want. So we have, okay, I'm going to close it in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right. Polls closed. Here are the results, everybody. We have 73% want to write and speak live. Wow, that's pretty amazing.
Fabulous.
Yeah, that's very cool. And we have 50% one-on-one. So that's awesome. So cool. I'm so
Great.
excited.
Well, when we're talking about this story as a tool, I want you to think about different size modules of your story. You're going to have a little module, for instance, first place might want a 500-word story for the website. So you can tell the same story, the same small part of your journey in a 500-word module for first place newsletter or for your church newsletter. You could take that same story and a 3-minute spoken YouTube might be 1,100 words. Guidepost story might require 1,500 words. You see what I mean? You take those and you have different modules, just like you do with your bio. Your bio appears sometimes at the end of your articles if you're writing articles. And you may have a short bio and then a longer bio and then a very detailed bio. They're all used for different things. And so that's what you want to remember. Is that one little piece of your story can be shared so many different ways. So anyway, I just thank you so much for coming and for listening and for being brave enough to write your stories and tell your stories. It's very, very exciting to me, and I look forward to reading your story when I need to be encouraged.
That's cool. Well, you guys, we have a few more minutes left, so we can do some question and answer time with Wendy. We already had 2 questions, so if anybody has a question you'd like to pose to her, you could type them in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. So, and if we don't get any in a couple, we'll just go ahead and end. We only have a few more minutes left, but we just love if you have any questions. Looks like we had a lot more people join us, so that's exciting. So I'm excited about Pamela saying about her TED Talk. That requires very concise. I like watching TED Talks. They're a really good example of concise speaking. All right, is her story published? Okay, Cheryl, whose story? Whose story are you referring to? That's what I need to know. Do you mean Wendy's story? Yes, Wendy, is your story published?
Bits and pieces. There's little bits of it in all the books that I have written, and so and that's how most people tell their stories. If you write a book, I wrote one book called Impressions in Clay, and there's little bits of my story and what I learned from working with clay my whole life, and so just little bits here and little bits there. But nobody would be interested in my whole story unless I became a movie star.
We'll make a movie of Wendy Lawton's life. That would be so awesome.
Oh, right.
Well, I just wanted to thank you. I know there's a lot of people on here that have encouraged me to write my story and go to writers' conferences too, and just hang around with other people that want to write. That's an important thing. It's just crazy. Okay, Monique is on here. Oh, Monique got to see herself. She says, thank you for using my story. She forgot that it was there and she needs to use it to help others. So there you go. She didn't even know. So we went live with our YouTube channel. We kind of revamped our YouTube channel, and First Place went, and all the videos that we had in different places we put on our YouTube channel. That really is the place to go nowadays. People are having YouTube channels. So yay, Monique, glad to talk to you. All right, anybody else have a question? I think we're going to go ahead and end. Wendy, I want to thank you so much. You are just awesome. We are so honored to have you be part of our First Place for Health groups. And I just thank you all. Next month, we will be back with Becky Turner, and she will be doing some spiritual training on, does your purse match your shoes? Is it big enough for your shoes? So really focusing on spiritual growth. And so join us next month with Becky Turner. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for attending. Bye.